Are you ready? You want to bounce out some push-ups too, or maybe some burpees? I hate burpees.
The kids love them.
They're so good for you.
The kids love burpees.
I should do burpees more often.
I think because of the name.
Burpees.
Burpees.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Matt and Fiona Show. Thank you so much for joining us. We are super excited to be here today. We're going to do that the whole time. One on, one off. Nah.
I messed it up.
One job. All right. Today
move on.
We're going to talk about honestly an exciting topic.
Yeah, it is.
Because this one is
Unexpected?
sure.
Okay.
Where we'll end up is right up our alley. Mm-hmm. But how we're getting there is something that I had never seen before.
Yeah.
Which I'm super excited about. Because, not that that's rare, but just...
Well, when you shared it with me...
All right. Build an ark. Mm-hmm. And you think you know where we're going with this, and you have no idea. And if you know us, our youngest, his name is Noah. Mm-hmm. And he loves to, anytime it comes up, or it's raining, he'll come up and do Noah and Ark. Mm-hmm. Because he loves the story of Noah and the Ark, because, well, his name is Noah. But that's not the ark we're talking about today.
No.
We're talking about a different ark. Mm-hmm. And not the Ark of the Covenant, which I guess is the other one.
Right.
But one that I had never referenced as an ark. Mm-hmm. So we were listening to something quite a while ago that sent me down this path, and it was a bunch of scholars doing a talk on Exodus as a whole, but specifically what we were listening to was they were talking about the kind of the first chapter of Exodus. Mm-hmm. And how Pharaoh had commanded, decreed, whatever, mm-hmm. that the Israelites were going to kill every male mm-hmm. son. Mm-hmm. Keep the women, but
every
kill
baby,
all the men. Every baby
sons.
born that was a boy mm-hmm. Was supposed to be murdered, and all of those fun stuff. And as they started talking about it, they're reading through it, and I'm not going to read a bunch of it to you, but the wife of Levi had a baby. Mm-hmm. It was a boy. Mm-hmm. They named him Moses. Actually, they didn't name him Moses. Pharaoh's daughter did. But we've all heard the story. Mm-hmm. She has the baby. She's hiding the baby. So she takes the baby, puts him in the bulrushes, mm-hmm. makes a little boat. We've all seen the little cartoons, mm-hmm. right? Or the little pictures.
Yep,
and
little illustrations.
Floats it down the Nile. And the Pharaoh's daughter's out there bathing, sees the little boat go by.
Here's the baby
and goes,
crying.
Here's the baby. And yada, yada, yada. But again, I kind of missed this. Mm-hmm. And when they started it, I kind of deep dove into it and found it fascinating, because what it says is, but when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him, dabbed it with asphalt and pitch, and put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the riverbank. Again, I have heard this story hundreds of times.
Yeah, you know it.
And I never once connected, A, the fact that it's ark, mm-hmm. B, the fact that she put tar and pitch on it. Mm-hmm. Right? In my mind, every time I've seen this, every time I've thought of this, I thought of the woven basket.
Right.
Right? And did cool, it probably kind of floated, kind of half sank. Mm-hmm. Right? I never gave any thought to the fact that she didn't have the baby and just put it in a basket and just kind of let it go down the river like it was a leaf. Right?
Right.
And when you read it, when you look at it like that, and you realize that she put in the work.
It was thoughtfully, meticulously.
Well, so often when we look at that concept, right, of dropping the baby off at the fire station, right, like just all of those kind of stories or examples, they all kind of just go together as like, oh no, I'm not happy with this, I need to get rid of this, for lack of a better term, and we're going to put it in a basket, and we're just going to kind of leave it somewhere
Drop the baby.
Yeah, we're going to drop the baby off
For somebody
for
else.
someone else to take care of. And heck, 3 men and a baby,
Oh my gosh.
right? Great movie. She didn't do that.
Right.
She constructed the ark. She built the structure.
Yes.
She built it to weather the water, to weather a storm,
To weather the unknown.
to protect the baby. Right? And if you've ever, our kids are at that age right now where they're doing all these science experiments. So Cohen, our oldest, gosh, months ago, got on this kick where he was building boats.
Oh, yes.
So he would find
Yes, he did.
pop bottles, cartons, literally a muffin container.
Yes.
Literally stinking any bit of recycling that didn't get to the recycling box, he took and made a boat.
Created boats. We have paper boxes
Yeah,
downstairs with
so
them.
we have boats everywhere because we're supposed to test them. They don't, like, his might float because they're plastic.
Right.
But we've all built, like if you've been in Boy Scouts or heck, you went to grade school,
Or you're a kid. You were
Or
a
you're a
kid
kid.
once.
you've made a boat out of Bristol board. You've tried to make one
Aluminum
out of cardboard.
foil.
Yeah, all kinds of things.
Electrical tape.
They never work,
Right.
right? They always disintegrate, they melt, they leak, whatever.
Yeah.
What I found so, I don't want to say shocking, but just,
Intriguing.
I was stinking surprised. Because it's the perfect example of she believed in God to protect her baby. But she didn't just go, oh Lord, I hope you'll protect my baby. I pray that you'll protect my baby.
She did. She did her part too.
She did her part. She put action into it. And was thoughtful. She prepared it so that, like, the Nile it's not always this smooth river. And it probably wasn't back then either. Right? They'd get storms, they get all kinds of stuff. Right? She knew that she couldn't just put them in a basket the way we've always imagined it.
Right.
So not only did she go out and, again, put the work in,
Yep.
trust in the Lord that if she did this,
Right.
because there's no way that she put the baby in the basket and didn't think, or put the baby in the basket and expect that the baby wasn't going to survive.
Right.
That it was going to go downriver and it was going to flip over and drown. That never would have crossed her mind. Because if it did, she never would have gone to the work.
Well, and this is what I always come back to. She must have, well, as we know, but had a solid belief and relationship with her God and a trust in God.
Yeah, well, she's breaking the law
Yes.
to do this. She kept the baby for 3 months before she did
Yeah.
this.
She was focused more on him than on man.
Well, yeah, otherwise she would have just given him up.
100%.
Right, so she kept him for 3 months. She hid him. She obviously fed him. Right, and again, we've had kids. Those first couple months, you need that to get there.
Yes.
Right, but so she goes, she builds this. She believes that if she does what she feels the Lord has told her to do,
Yep.
to save this baby, to put it in an ark,
Right.
to float it down the river, again, prepared, protected, surrounded,
Yes.
and know that she can trust God that that baby will be taken care of. So what happens next? The baby floats down the river.
Yes.
We don't know how far, but like again, it couldn't have been that far.
It's still a baby in a river.
Well, it's a baby in a river, but also the Israelites at the time, they're slaves of the Egyptians.
Yeah.
So it's not like they were at a camp 100 miles away,
Right.
right? They would have been close. They would have been in relative proximity,
Oh, absolutely.
which you'll get to, as you go a little bit deeper, right? So she has the faith that that baby's going to be safe. She puts the baby in the water, baby floats away. Pharaoh's daughter hears the baby crying, sends one of her girls to go get it, brings it up. Oh my gosh, it's a baby. Like, who doesn't love a 3-month-old baby?
So cute.
They smell great. But not only does she take it in and go, I'm going to keep this. She knows it's a stinking Hebrew baby,
Yep.
like an Israelite baby. She knows. Why else would it be in the river?
Right.
So then she says to one of her girls, take the child I'm trying to find where it was. She says, go find a nurse, go find a Hebrew woman to nurse it. There's tons of Hebrew slaves, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like there's 5. There's tons. What does she do? She sends one of her aides to go get someone to take care of the baby. Because she's a princess, she ain't doing it. She goes and finds the mother.
Yeah.
And again, like, I'm sure she wasn't the only mother
Right.
who had recently had a child. Because again, it's a huge encampment. And they probably didn't have birth control. But she finds the actual mother and brings the mother in and says, hey, would you nurse this baby and take care of it?
Yeah.
We'll name him Moses. So she put her faith in the Lord that the Lord would take care of the baby. Then she did everything she stinking could to protect that child.
Yep.
And set it up, I don't want to say for success, but for safety.
Protection.
Yeah. And then sent it out into, quote unquote, the storm
Yeah.
to float down the river unassisted and hopefully find a better place. Right?
She didn't know.
Find her own,
She
find
had,
his own way.
as a mom, this is petrifying to think about it.
Yep.
But when she took that baby and she did absolutely everything she could with building that ark of protection, that safety to let go of that baby. At that moment in time, the only thing she could do was trust God. She built the ark. She built it. She put her love, sweat, and tears into it. All she could do at that point in time is trust God. She had no idea what was next,
No,
but
none.
she knew God knew what was next, and that was enough for her at that point.
That's the only way you could convince yourself to do it,
Yes.
right?
To
'Cause again,
100%
to put
solely.
the work in
Yep.
to do it. If you're going to just say, well, it's out of my hands, again, you would have just put it in a regular basket.
Yeah.
You would not have taken the time to build that structure, right?
Yeah.
So where I want to take this, again, because I had just glossed over the pitch and the other stuff
Asphalt.
that helped waterproof it, right? I had never picked up on that. And the care she showed to protect that child in what she was doing to make the surroundings essentially a hedge of protection.
Yeah.
Right? Like we pray that over our kids every day.
Yeah.
Right? That they'll have a hedge of protection around them. It wasn't until I read this and put the 2 and 2 together that I clued into that. So what I want to kind of talk about now that we've taken this example is, what are you doing to protect your kids?
Yeah.
I know what we're doing.
I know what we're doing. Yeah.
But also, how can we do more? Because
our kids need it.
this week we've been talking, you and I have been talking about a lot of stuff. Just because, honestly, the world is crazy.
Yeah.
And it's always been crazy. We get it. Right? But I know that there are many people that would look at the way we raise our children and go, all right, they're cool, but there might be a touch overboard. And to those people, I say, yes, we are.
And
on
we
purpose.
Intend to stay overboard.
It's an active, we are actively working to protect our kids. And that's not to say that anyone else is not. I trust that every parent is working hard to protect their kids. But what I want to ask and what I want to question is, go read that story in Exodus 2, Exodus 1 and 2, right? Dig into the last part of the first chapter and the first part of the second. Contrast that with how you're raising your kids. And do you think that you're doing enough, that you're building a strong enough structure around your kids to protect them from the storms that are outside?
Yeah.
Because, and it is a challenge, and I understand that, and I respect that. And again, I'm not trying to say you're not doing this. I'm just saying I read this, and I know that we're already a little overboard, and went, I don't know if we're overboard enough.
Well, it's also one of those things, just along those lines, is protecting your kids is a much harder job than I could have ever imagined.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes it's exhausting. But don't allow the exhaustion to mean that you lower your standards.
Yep.
Or you lower your intensity with it. Because as time goes on, I mean, obviously, we always talk about, we need to start allowing our kids to do dangerous things safely. And, that leash that we have them on, as they get older, obviously, it's going to have to get longer. But that doesn't mean that our protection changes. It doesn't decrease.
Yeah, it evolves.
Yeah, it evolves.
It evolves. And, I don't want to get caught up, and I'd be remiss if we didn't kind of explain or at least discuss that there are two aspects to this. There's the practical / reality.
Real life, yeah.
And there's also the spiritual, right? So on the spiritual side, which I'm not going to say is easier, but it might be a little bit more cut and dry, right? You can protect your kids. You can build a spiritual structure around them, a spiritual hedge of protection. Well, you can. You can pray over them. You can meditate. You can build them up. You can teach them. You
could show them what's at the top of your pyramid.
Oh yeah, that's last week. That's
last week.
That's what we call in the business a callback. We should link below. But actually, it'll be linked at the end. But you can work really hard on building that spiritual aspect, right? You can pray, you can meditate, you can grow that hedge of protection around them by doing that.
Yeah, you can teach them. You can teach them the scriptures, even just like last week, Lil Noah was not feeling well. And he is 3 years old. And with him, we were able to do a confession with the Word of God and speak that life back into him. And in 3 hours...
They're never too young for that.
No. And you want to know what he said? He could do his confession. And in 3 hours, his morning was on the couch and his afternoon was running through sprinklers, eating Freezies. And you would never know how sick he was that morning. And that is something... You can teach the kids that, and they need to see it in your life too, though.
That's part of protecting them to go out into the unknown.
Yeah.
Right? And
training them.
Yeah. And again, if you were brought up in church or if you've got kind of the background that maybe we've had, you know all these things, but then you take them for granted because you grew up with it.
Right.
And you don't always recognize the fact that, especially if you weren't born into it, right? Like I was born into this. So I grew up in children's church.
Right.
Right. Not everybody is.
Right.
But if you start to train those kids and raise those kids with those biblical principles. Yeah. Right. And hey, when you fall down and you get hurt, you call on the name of Jesus. You call on his healing, right? Opposed to the, owie, can you get me a Band-Aid, right? You're preparing them to protect themselves as they get set out.
We do have Band-Aids here too, just,
No, we just pray. We just pray. And in tongues, of course.
Only.
Only in tongues. Yeah, this is the only time we actually...
Oh my gosh.
But you can do that. And then on the natural side, because again, same thing. And I think that's what I loved so much about this example.
Right.
Is it's faith with actions.
Yeah, right.
Because so often it's one or the other.
No, you need to do both.
So when you're protecting your kids, when you're helping them build a structure of protection around their lives, right? You then can go into all of the natural protection things.
Yeah. Common sense.
Common sense, teaching them to, again.
And not by instilling fear, but instilling wisdom. And there's a difference between...
There's a huge difference.
There's a difference between showing your kids the importance of having wisdom as opposed to building fear. I mean, and the line can sometimes be...
It's very, very fine.
Yeah, you can kind of walk that line if you're not careful, but it's about building wisdom in them so that, naturally speaking, so that they could handle situations.
But there are so many practical areas where you can protect them. And, I work in kind of the tech construction-ish, that whole vein. With a couple of our companies now. And the question that I get asked the most consistently is, do your kids have phones and TVs in the room? And they don't. They don't have phones.
Nope.
They don't have TVs.
Nope.
And anytime I get asked that and I answer that.
And their screen time is very limited.
I get a very confused look out of people. They're perplexed every time.
Yes, every time.
And it's very easy for me to come back with the, it's the whole the cobbler's kids never have shoes, because everyone laughs at that and no one questions your parenting skills. But if they dig a little deeper, it's very easy again for me to say, well, I work in the tech field. I work in the IT world. I know what's out there and I know how easy it is to find what's out there. And, obviously that's not the only realm that you have to protect your kids in, but it's a really big one these days. And honestly, it's the one that, with all due respect, most parents are oblivious to and completely out of their depth with.
Yeah.
And we've talked back and forth, and maybe we will do this, but we've talked about doing an episode just on things to watch for.
Yeah, literally.
And how to dig into some of that. But all that to say, there are so many things we can do. It is not just the don't take candy from strangers, which you should never do. I can't believe I have to say that, but you'd be shocked. But it is, like, we had a conversation today. You were in the bank with the kids doing a deposit, and there was a lovely, I don't know why I'm telling the story, you were there.
So I had to take the kids to the bank with me today, and there was a lovely lady there, and she had a cute little puppy. And my kids were sitting on the bench while I was waiting. I was right there. But so she came down to wait for her appointment. Now, I really appreciated this because the lady spoke to me in first, and she said, because she could tell that my kids were looking at the dog. And she looked at me and she said, "Are your kids okay with dogs? Is it okay if they pet them?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And literally, she turned around to the kids and said, "Would you like to see my dog?" And instantaneously, they turned and they swarmed. And they were so happy to play with this little puppy in the bank. And it just made me realize how instantaneously their guard was dropped. She could have done or said anything because all of a sudden there's this cute little puppy. And anything, because I mean, I talk to them all the time before we go places and before we go to parks. I mean, we get we have conversations quite often. But their guard was dropped immediately because there was this cute little puppy dog. And all of a sudden, I mean, and she was a lovely lady, but this lovely lady,
there was no issue.
There was no issue with this lady, but I just saw the parallel. All of a sudden, this lovely lady was like, they were like this. Because she had a cute little puppy and they were enamored and so excited to be able to play with this puppy.
Well, and it's like, our oldest is wanting to get a little bit more freedom and do more things.
Oh, yeah.
And we were down out of town a couple weeks ago, and we're at a restaurant and he wants to go to the bathroom. And he's old enough to go to the bathroom by himself. And again, I don't judge anybody who lets or doesn't let their kids do whatever. I get it.
It's not a debate on that.
He asked, and I said, sure. And his eyes lit up.
I know.
Because he's so excited to get that little bit of freedom.
Yeah.
But I knew, because I've been to the restaurant.
Yep.
I know that there's no exit there. I know I can see the bathroom. I can see who's in and who's out.
We can see the front door.
And because I'm also, one might say, hyper vigilant, or just vigilant, or just aware, whatever.
Hyper vigilant.
I'm self-aware.
All of the above and then some.
I knew that no one had gone in there in at least 10 minutes. I was fairly certain that there was no one in there at the time.
Yep.
So we let him go to the bathroom. I can see him walk in the door. I can see that no one else has gone in the door. And I can see him come out. He gets some freedom. I know that
we still get to be overprotective.
There shouldn't be an issue there, and there wasn't.
No.
Fast forward to this week, we went to a park. We're having a little picnic, doing some family stuff. He wants to go to the bathroom again. There is an outbuilding 400 yards away, right? A little,
Little,
just a little hut.
Public
But
bathroom.
I can't see the door.
Nope.
And it's right by a road.
Yep.
And there's a bunch of random cars and people. All over the place.
Everywhere.
Again, it's a public park. It's very safe.
The middle of the city. We enjoy going.
We're in London, Ontario. It's not the hotbed of wherever your mind wants to take you. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and that doesn't mean that it may not happen. So he asks, and I say, no. And he looks at me. Because again, he can't connect it.
He's baffled as to why he can't just go to the bathroom.
And all I have to do is explain to him that, son, how far away is it?
Right.
Do you see the door? No. Do you see the road? Yes. That's why. 2 seconds, I'll come with you. Which of course meant that the youngest had to go. So it was a big old party. But we walked down there. There's a car parked right outside the bathroom that I had not seen. And again, we talked about awareness earlier. typically I notice these things. It had pulled up, and again, it was a incredibly nice older gentleman who was walking out of the bathroom as we walked in.
Right.
And then he sat in his car and waited for his wife.
Right.
But I didn't know he was in that bathroom. Mm-hmm. I did not see that vehicle and would have had no idea. Plus, I'm 400 yards away.
We were far away.
Right?
So we don't expect anything to happen.
And the likelihood of anything happening
Slim
is
to
slim to
none.
none. But it's also one of those situations of I can protect them.
And it doesn't take a lot of work, and we're
No.
not holding anything back from him.
No. But it's one of those things where I have a lot of friends, I have a lot of clients. I know a lot of people who would have been like, yeah, go for it. Mm-hmm. And again, the likelihood of something happen is next to none. Right?
Right.
But there's still simple things that we can do to protect our kids when they're out.
It takes time, it takes thought, it takes effort, it takes energy.
Now, does that mean when they're 16 that I won't let them go to that bathroom at the park when we're at the park? Probably not. Maybe. Who knows? They're not 16 yet, so I don't have to make that call yet.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and also the other thing is then our little girl wants to go, and then the little boy wants to go. And that's not happening, especially with our little girl. But it takes no extra effort to, in these situations.
So many people want to look at that example and say it's overbearing, right? And the whole concept of what we wanted to cover in this one, what I really wanted to cover in this episode, was, again, when I read this and realized the extent that she went to protect him. She still was trusting in God, but she did everything she could
Naturally
to set
speaking.
him up for success
Yeah.
and for protection,
Yeah.
right?
It's really good.
Because again, had she skipped the tar part,
Right?
would that ark have made it to the princess, to the daughter of the Pharaoh? I don't know why I'm calling her a princess. I don't know if that makes her a princess or not. But
Get the point.
details matter. But had she not done that, we may not have had any part of that whole story.
We may not have had the book of Exodus.
Who knows?
Well, no, but it's true.
Moses became an integral part of the biblical foundation of life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like,
History.
so you look at what she did to protect her child and build something to protect him as she sent him out into the world.
Yeah.
There was nothing more she could do.
She did everything she could do.
But that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, she couldn't build a submarine, although those are questionable these days. That's a callback too.
Burn.
A crunch.
Oh. Oh, man. Keep going.
And that'll get us banned. No. There was nothing more she could do.
No.
So anytime I talk to somebody or somebody asks me with our kids if we're a little overkill,
Yes, we
I go, yeah, we totally are. You know why? Because I'm going to do
so glad I can.
everything we can
Yeah.
to protect them. Again, both in the natural and in the spiritual.
Yes.
And as long as you're doing that and doing everything that you can, I just want to encourage you to keep that up. And if someone's ever made a comment to you or said something to you as a parent that has made you kind of, well, maybe I'm being a little too harsh.
You know, just this is the way I look at it. These children are not ours, they're God's, right? He gave them to us. And he gave them to us because he trusts us to protect his kids, right? So why would we not want to take something that God's given us, like something so precious that he's trusted to us? Why would we not do everything within our power that we have to protect and trust spiritually and naturally?
Yeah. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
So go build an ark. You can do it. All right. That's all the time we have for this episode. No. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for sharing and commenting, all that fun stuff. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us at the Matt and Fiona Show on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all that fun stuff, and hopefully soon on the website. But otherwise, tune in next week for another episode of the Matt and Fiona Show. Thanks for watching.
I know.